Don't you love it when things are both easier and more affordable? Like when the rain washes your car for you. Or like when you save up to 10% by bundling your renters and auto insurance with USAA. Bundle with USAA and start saving. Get a quote today.
The Elder Wand, the Resurrection Stone, the Cloak of Invisibility. Together they make the Deathly Hallows. Together they make one Master of Death. The last will and testament of Albus Percival Wulfric Brian Dumbledore.
Do not pity the dead, Harry. Pity the living, and above all those who live without love.
Hey everyone, welcome to Hogwarts, a podcast. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Hogwarts, a podcast. We are covering Chapter 30, The Sacking of Severus Snape. We have Elizabeth with us.
Hi everyone.
There is a lot going on in this chapter. It starts off with a little bit of a slow burn, and boy, does it pick up.
Yeah.
It really steps up a notch about halfway through this chapter, so I will let everyone know that this chapter is one of my personal favorite chapters. And I know I've probably said that a couple of times on this podcast by now. We're in book 7.
We haven't gotten to my favorite chapter yet.
I reread this chapter often. It's one of those... I can remember my first reading of this chapter, and I could remember reading... Even on my first read, just going over some certain paragraphs multiple times and just kind of diving in and trying to soak in all of it. So when we get to those parts, I'll try to remember to actually point them out. But okay. This chapter is just a really cool chapter in my book. So we start off as we left the last chapter in the Ravenclaw common room, with Alecto just touching her dark mark. Harry immediately jumps into Voldy's mind and gets this visage of the cave and the sea, and he's standing there looking at it, obviously searching for the locket. Mm-hmm. At that point, he gets wrenched back into the common room by the loud sound of Luna stunning Alecto Caro. Because obviously she was still hidden under the invisibility cloak, so Alecto wasn't fully aware that there was another person in the room.
I know you talked about this a little bit with Julie, but the fact that we're in Ravenclaw's house always makes me really happy, because if you don't remember, I am a Ravenclaw, and I always thought it was really, really fun to go into other common rooms. I regret the fact that she didn't write about Hufflepuffs, which I know you guys also talked about, but I just love seeing how airy it is and how spacious and how it just seems to fit my personality so much, especially the fact that it's so blue. I just had to comment on that.
Well, I know you, I know very much you enjoy the Ravenclaw common room, and you also enjoy Luna. Mm-hmm. So now you're getting a taste of Luna Lovegood in the Ravenclaw common room,
where she belongs. I love it.
She says that this is the first time that she's successfully used a stunning spell outside of a DA class, so that's exciting for her. Mm-hmm. Obviously, the noise of her stunning Alecto Caro awakens the rest of the Ravenclaws, so they all come streaming down. Harry bolts underneath the cloak again, so he's hidden away. And as the Ravenclaws come down, they see the visage of Alecto Caro on the ground, and a brave first year comes up, prods the body of Alecto Caro, and
with his toe,
and proclaims she's dead. He seems brave.
Yeah, doesn't just belong in Gryffindor. The bravery.
This is very much is not a shout out to it, but I'm going to just put it as a shout out. This is a nod to the Wizard of Oz, right? The witch is dead. Celebrate. The Wicked Witch.
Many cheers.
Many cheers.
Except that the Wicked Witch's brother, I guess in this case, is very much alive on the other side of the Ravenclaw door.
Yes, Amicus has obviously been alerted to everything, considering Alecto pressed her finger to the dark mark, which we can get into that in a second. But as everybody is celebrating the Wicked Witch's seeming demise, Luna actually pipes up under the cloak and whispers in Harry's ear, like, "Oh, they seem pleased. I've done well."
I just imagine that Luna and her, like, airy voices being like, "Oh, they're pleased. They seem pleased."
My work has pleased them. So, obviously, Amicus is concerned by sensing the dark mark burning on his left arm and seeming to know exactly what's going on. Obviously, there's the memo, I guess, put out by Voldy, like, "Hey, don't use this unless you have Harry Potter. I don't want to be bothered. I don't want to be alerted. I don't want to be talked to. Unless you have the boy, do not bother me." He put a big "do not disturb" sign on this dark mark. And obviously Amicus knows.
Well, he's like, if we don't have Harry, we're going to be just like the Malfoys. We're going to be in so much trouble.
But it's interesting that he knows that it's not one of the 12 Death Eaters in Hogsmeade. He knows it's Alecto.
Yeah.
So this does have some sort of caller ID feature. This clearly has a caller ID feature. Oh, it's this Death Eater.
Well, I guess it's kind of like the coins that Hermione made. Like, Neville said he was using the coins to communicate with people, and they were able to know who sent which message. So maybe it was the same kind of magic that created the coins.
So, yeah, obviously Amicus is very, very worried that, hey, if we don't actually have Harry Potter, this is going to be a very, very bad thing for us. Why? Because Voldy, like we said at the top of the episode, is out making sure all of his Horcruxes are safe. And we see him by the sea, and throughout this chapter, we kind of, as Harry's going about his activities in this chapter, we kind of flit into Voldy's mind and flit back.
Well, anytime there's, like, an extreme emotion associated with it, like, I just checked and they're not there, or I'm having the rage of going to the next one and realizing, like, oh, shoot, this is a problem.
But for my sanity, we're not going to flit in and out of this chapter. So we'll just talk about the Voldy side of things right out the gate. So Voldy's obviously at the cave to check on the locket. He is happy when he gets the alert of, oh, they must have Harry Potter. This is great news. Awesome. Mm-hmm. That being said, just for completeness sake, I'm going to make sure this locket's okay.
Which is smart. I mean, and fair of him. If he's already made the journey out there, might as well go and check it.
So he begins his check for the locket, and he obviously gets through the first bits okay. But then he gets to the actual lake in the cavern. My question is, or at least the thing that jumped out to me in Voldy's search to find out if the locket is still safe or not, is when he gets to the boat on the lake. He himself can't fly there. He has to actually get into the boat and slowly sail across this lake. In this crucial, important time in Voldy's reign of power, that even he, in his domain of intense dark magic, must sit in a tiny rowboat alone, sailing across a large black... I find this hilarious. I don't know that anybody else does.
No, I just think it's a precaution he took, and it's still working, and...
It's a precaution that even he is not immune to.
Well, you don't want to be immune to it if you want it to be safe.
What does he do sitting there for however long this boat ride takes?
Think about all the things, all the quips that he can tell Harry Potter. They'd be like, I finally got you.
Bonkers.
The boy who could not get away.
This is bonkers to me. You have to literally sit in a little rowboat for 5 minutes, 20 minutes? I don't know how long this takes. But you're just sitting there alone, just being like, just chilling. Just hanging out.
He's got his thoughts to be thinking.
The boat's rowing, still a rowing. Like, what do you do for that long? I don't know.
You just don't like silence. That's the thing. So I would be perfectly fine sitting in a boat by myself in the middle of this dark, silent cave.
Pitch black darkness?
Yeah, I'd be fine. Especially if I know what's on the other side, because I created the trap myself.
Let me know if anybody else finds this hilarious, because I just read this, and I'm like, in this intensely emotional, tense time, he's forced to sit in a rowboat by himself for a long time.
He's kind of sit and reflect upon his thoughts.
I just find it hilarious, me personally. But anyway.
Lucky that he did, because this is giving Harry more time to get things, like, figured out over at Hogwarts.
So he eventually gets to the little mini island in the middle of the lake. And he looks in the basin, notices the color of the potion has changed. It's now clear. And he can look directly into the basin, where he finds no locket.
Yeah.
And immense rage and fury at this just shock to his system. Because remember, when he was going over these Horcruxes when he was back at Gringotts, he was like, no. The locket's safe. He used the word absurd to even consider the locket being at risk. So he was so sure of this. And now finding that it has now been taken, that rage and fury must have been something to behold. And now what does he have to do? Get back in the rowboat. Now he's sitting in the rowboat, stewing for however long this is.
He's not entirely alone. The inferior are there.
You know he is mean mugging it all the way back to shore,
well, I'm
okay?
sure he's letting out some choice words that are echoing throughout the cave.
His fury must be unparalleled in this little tiny rowboat, okay?
So just imagine it as like a catharticism where, like, if you're in your car and you've had a particularly rough day and you just, like, scream, like, you're surrounded by your annoyance, your despair, and your frustration, and that's what Voldemort's doing. It's therapy.
Therapy with murder in his heart is what it's described.
I'm not necessarily saying it's great therapy, but he's letting out his frustration.
That rage can only build from the start of that rowboat trip back. It must only build until he can finally leave this cave. But yes, it is described as murder in his heart. But anyway, we cut back to Hogwarts, and Amicus is trying to get into the Ravenclaw common room to get to his sibling, Alecto. And the Ravenclaw common room door stands between him and the actual common room.
Okay, I know Julie said she didn't like this door, but I love this door. I think it's such a cool password system.
This door seems very impenetrable for being a door.
Yeah, like, I would feel very safe in the Ravenclaw common room.
Amicus gets the question. He gets a question like everybody else does. Uh-huh. The question is, where do vanished objects go? And Amicus is like, I don't know. I have no idea, nor do I care. Let me in. The door obviously not budging. He starts firing spells at this thing.
He's making a ruckus. Like, it's late at night. Stop being so crazy in the hallways.
This door is immovable and invincible, it seems like. So he's not having any success. Obviously, all of the ruckus that is created by the spells gets some attention. McGonagall appears at the door. And Amicus is like, you need to get Flitwick. Flitwick has to open the door. McGonagall's like, you know your sister's in there, right? Your sister should be able to open the door. She's not answering. We should note that the whole reason why Alecto's even in the room to begin with is because Flitwick let her in earlier in the evening.
Right.
So apparently she wasn't any good at riddles either, that she had to go call on Flitwick.
To be fair, if you're not in a desperate situation, I think I would also just go to Flitwick and be like, okay, open the door, please.
Amicus I can get.
Yeah.
Amicus is in a more panicked state of mind.
Yeah.
Alecto should have been relatively calm.
But even if you're calm, I think I would just be like, okay, here, let me into your... Almost as like a courtesy thing, which I know Alecto isn't necessarily thinking about, because what does she have to do for courtesy? But if I was going to try to get into another common room and I'm an adult, like, I think I'd get the head of the house out of respect.
Maybe. I have no idea. She might not have even... For all we know, she probably didn't even try the riddle. She just probably went to Flitwick, like you're saying.
Yeah.
It was like, let me in. That is very, very plausible. But anyway, McGonagall is like, fine, I guess I can let you in. I'll answer the riddle. So she knocks on the door. The question is said again, which is, again, for all of our listeners, where do vanished objects go? McGonagall replies, into non-being, which is to say, everything. What do you think about that answer, Elizabeth?
Well, according to Wizarding World, McGonagall was a hat stall between Gryffindor and Ravenclaw, so it makes total sense that she's able to logic her way through it. I love the answer. I love the answers the same way Luna's answers, where it's basically just like you're giving both answers at the same time, but no answer at all, and it works.
Julie's frustration is that I think there is not an actual answer to most of these riddles, at least the two that we've seen.
Yeah.
There seems to be no actual definable answer.
Which I'm sure J.K. Rowling was like, I'm just going to give 2 examples, and that's about all I'm going to come up with, because this is hard.
It is interesting that you teach English, which is a little bit more subjective
Yes.
of
very
a
much
subject.
So. Yeah.
Where you can reason your way into an argument. Mm-hmm. So it might make a little bit more sense. I could see where people would have an issue with, well, you're not actually giving an answer.
I mean, I can understand the frustration of like you guys were talking about, of if you're tired or you're having a bad day or your brain just is not working and coming across a question like this, being just like, I don't know, just let me in. I get that. But at the same time, I think it's really kind of fun to think about things in a non-literal way or a more circular kind of way or more creative way, I guess.
So what do you think about the actual question and answer, though? Because I know on previous episodes, we have discussed, like, what happens if you vanish an object.
Yeah.
Literally, where does it go?
Which she says to non-being, which is to say everything. For some reason, my brain immediately goes to science. Like the idea that...
Physics.
Well, I'm thinking of the idea like we're all made up of atoms. So if you...
Matter can neither be created nor destroyed. Everything comes from something.
Right. So if it's been vanished, then it just becomes atoms, which is a part of everything. Like it goes right back into the stardust or whatever that we're all made from.
Which means if you're conjuring something, you're literally wrangling in the atoms and molecules around you.
Yeah.
To form something.
It's very artistic when you think about it. Like you have like a slab of clay and you're able to create this vase or
it's interesting,
or a figurine or whatever, and it's like you have the material all around you, your artistic material, and through the magic you're able to create whatever it is that you want or vanish whatever it is that you want.
So after McGonagall does answer this riddle, the door replies with nicely phrased and opens. Amicus, predictably, pretty unhappy to see that Alecto is now unconscious on the floor.
I love all the little Ravenclaws like that haven't already fled to bed are like, we gotta get out of here because he's now in our common room and he's not happy.
Yep. Amicus informs McGonagall that Voldy expects Potter to visit Ravenclaw Tower.
Which in itself, like, I know Harry's not really thinking about it at the moment, but the fact that Voldemort told them Harry might come here tonight.
Yeah, now that you know that Voldy has warned them about Ravenclaw, he's tipped his hand as to clearly what the next one is.
Yeah.
Unless you want to play, like, a whole 4D chess, and Voldy's like, well, if he thinks it's this, then I can trip him up with it, you know.
That's why you're thinking too hard.
Yes. But anyway, McGonagall is confused by this news and says, why would Potter be in Ravenclaw Tower? He belongs in my house. And Harry, still hidden under the invisibility cloak, noticed amongst the confusion and the anger in her voice, pride. And he felt a rush of affection for McGonagall.
I love that. I feel like throughout the series, there's been so many cases where McGonagall is the unsung hero for Harry. And I just think about, like, yes, her getting him onto the Quidditch team or the whole have a biscuit Potter and that stuff. Like, it's not even, like, because he's famous. It's just pride of the student. And it's really nice to see from a teacher's perspective.
I have my issues with McGonagall from certain points in this series. I think she is far from infallible. However, That being said, I think her best asset is she treats everybody seemingly equally. Mm-hmm. Outside of a couple of individuals. Again, not infallible. But generally, she treats everybody with the same level of mixture of disdain yet respect. Mm-hmm. She's curt with a lot of people. She's short and to the point, and that can come off as a little abrasive at times. Mm-hmm. But she's generally like that with everybody. Slytherins, Ravenclaws, Hufflepuffs, and her own Gryffindors. She's evenly distributing her more aggressive tendencies.
It's fun because when I used to read it as a younger me, I would always think of it as like being fond of certain teachers that I had, and those were the teachers that really made me want to pursue teaching in the first place. And now as a teacher, like I can easily imagine myself talking about any of my students and just being like, oh, I'm so proud of what they've done, and I taught them, like that kind of affection. And thinking the flip side of that of like, well, of course you have affection for your students. The idea of them having affection back is like, oh, very heartwarming.
I mean, it is Harry Potter. I don't know if she has the same level of affection for like Dean or Seamus.
She still might have affection towards them.
Affection, maybe not the same level. I'm just saying. But anyway, obviously Amicus is still quite panicked and quite alarmed because, well, he's seeing his sister on the floor. You know what he's not seeing? Harry Potter anywhere around here.
We're in trouble.
We're in big, big trouble here. And he ends up coming to the conclusion, which I think is honestly, if we're taking out the evil side of it, mm-hmm. It's a fairly quick solution he comes to.
Yeah.
That is, honestly, evil, but reasonable.
Like, Voldemort obviously would see through it, and he would not be...
Maybe.
He wouldn't be forgiving about it.
I get it, but you could sell this, though.
You'd at least probably still be alive.
You can sell this. And you never know. Death Eaters, they know who their Dark Lord is. I bet you a few of them have picked up that occlumency skill.
Yeah, true.
So Amicus says, hey, I have a solution to all this. We'll blame it on the kids. Mm-hmm. They overwhelmed my sister. They stunned her, and they pressed her finger to her left arm when she was unconscious. Mm-hmm. Clearly, that's what will tell the Dark Lord.
He says that, and McGonagall's face just, like, drains. She's like,
well, he goes
further.
Oh,
my gosh.
He says, who cares if we blame it on the kids? It's just a couple of kids. What's the difference?
Yeah, because clearly implying Voldemort will come and torture
He's still
them.
going to be upset.
Yeah.
But Amicus is fairly confident he could sell this lie to the Dark Lord. And McGonagall replies to Amicus, what's the difference? Truth and lies, courage and cowardice. I'll tell you right now, I'm not going to permit that. I'm not going to permit you harming these students because of your cowardice and your mistakes. Mm-hmm. At that point, Amicus moves very close to McGonagall, states in a couple of different words that he is in charge. The Death Eaters are in charge here. And then proceeds to spit in her face.
Which is a choice.
That's a choice. It's a choice that Harry particularly dislikes. Mm-hmm. He throws off the cloak, shouts, you shouldn't have done that, Crucio.
Yeah.
And this Crucio, this Cruciatus curse, this torture curse, lifts Amicus off of his feet, writhing through the air, thrashing and howling in pain, smashing into a nearby bookcase, crumples on the ground, completely insensible. Harry notes, you know what? Bellatrix was right. You really do have to mean it.
I like the follow-up there, though, because McGonagall's response is like, when she gets over her shock of seeing Harry and what just happened, she's like, Potter, that was foolish. And he's like, well, he's bad at you. Like, what do you expect me to do here?
Yep. I do have to say this, though, with that Bellatrix comment, I'm going to throw this question out at you. Of all the teachers of magic, both legitimately professional teachers and just people who have imparted wisdom about magic onto Harry Potter, Who have been his best teachers?
You could make the argument that there's been a lot of Death Eaters that have taught
Yes,
him a lot.
I can, and I am prepared to make that
Because
argument.
you could say Bellatrix just taught him how you gotta really mean the unforgivable curses. Snape taught him Expelliarmus.
Yes.
We had Barty Crouch
Yes.
Jr. teaching him a whole bunch of
Keep
stuff.
going,
there,
Elizabeth.
too. Like, yeah, I could see that, but
There's an argument to be made.
yeah, there's
An argument to be
definitely
made the
an
other
argument
side
to be
too, but
But I think it's also fair to say that the stuff that they taught, I mean, Expelliarmus has obviously come into play many a time,
yes, indeed.
and it's been very useful. The stuff that Barty Crouch Jr. taught was, well, let's face it, he was a good teacher. He was playing the undercover role very well, which, of course, he had to do to keep Dumbledore fooled.
Well, he
but-
knows dark magic as well.
Yeah, so it makes sense he'd be able to do the defense against it. Bellatrix, I feel like that was more of a comment than it was a teaching moment. But he obviously...
I think it was both.
Well, I mean, he obviously took away from it, like, okay, you have to mean it.
Well, the
But
lesson clicked.
What
The
I
lesson
find
finally
interesting
clicked.
is more, like, this isn't the first time he's used an unforgivable curse, let alone this unforgivable curse. For Imperio... I mean, when he used it, it was still effective whether or not he really meant it or not. This is the second time of using Crucio, of course. It's interesting that the anger he felt after Bellatrix's taunt about Sirius was apparently less intense than this moment. Either that or he's just remembering what she had said and therefore now applying it to use it.
I think it's pure. I think at the time in the ministry, I think he was so surprised by the events of that night that I don't think his heart was truly in any spell he was really casting.
I could see him as being surprised he even said it.
Here, there was nothing but anger.
Mm-hmm.
There wasn't sadness. There wasn't, a depression. There wasn't happiness. There was nothing but anger. He wanted to hurt this person.
I think another layer there is knowing that we have to get this done quickly because the very next thing he tells McGonagall is, hey, Voldemort's on his way. We gotta get going.
Yeah, obviously with Harry uncovering himself from the invisibility cloak, McGonagall is quite stunned to see Harry Potter. She's also very stunned to see Luna also emerge from underneath the invisibility cloak. 2 criminals on the run. Mm-hmm. This stuns her so much that she actually falls back into a chair.
Well, I love Luna coming out of the cloak being like, oh, are we allowed to say his name now? Because Harry was like, it doesn't matter. He knows I'm here. Like, Voldemort.
So Harry says he needs to find Ravenclaw's diadem. I need to speak with Flitwick. I gotta find this diadem. Amicus, starting to recover from the Crucio attack, starts getting himself back together again. McGonagall casually uses Imperio. So if you hadn't gotten over the shock of Harry just using his own unforgivable curse, now you get Professor Minerva McGonagall, head of the Gryffindor house, deputy headmistress at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, now using an unforgivable curse, Imperio, on Amicus.
Well, to be fair, I guess in the first war they said unforgivable curses were forgivable, so times are desperate.
So McGonagall uses Imperio a little bit better than Harry used previously, because she actually has like a point to it. Amicus ends up collecting both siblings' wands, brings them to McGonagall, then has him go lay down next to his sister, which McGonagall then binds them both together with a silver rope and turns back to Harry and is like, what are you doing here? And Harry responds with, I'm acting on Albus's orders, which is like if you're talking to a member of the Order of the Phoenix, that's like the phrase. That's the passcode. You can trump anything they say by just saying, look, I'm doing this on Albus's orders, okay? Don't question me. McGonagall predictably falls back and promises to secure the school while Harry searches for the object. Harry's like, wait, you can secure the school? McGonagall responds, we teachers are actually rather good at magic.
I love her.
I'm sure we can hold him off for a while. Harry informs McGonagall about the Room of Requirement as a possible escape route for any people that actually need to evacuate the school. Because obviously the concern is there's a lot of innocent people here that are going to get caught up in the crossfire.
Right.
So we need a way out. And McGonagall starts questioning him and like, is this enough for hundreds of students?
Probably not, but what else are we going to do?
Also, hundreds of students, Elizabeth. Did you catch that?
Yeah, we've had this discussion before.
So many times.
Oh, numbers are hard. Keeping numbers consistent are hard.
With the amount of characters that have actually been named in this series, it has nowhere near approached 100, let alone hundreds.
Maybe this year's first year class has like 200 kids in it or something.
Maybe.
Which makes no sense because half the people haven't come back to Hogwarts because they're on the run. It's consistency is hard.
Hundreds of students.
Yeah.
Anyway, McGonagall agrees that this is a valid plan and then casts a net from the ceiling that hoists the Carrows and has them dangling in this giant net. They make the description like two ugly sea creatures like caught in a net.
That reminds me of Spider-Man.
A little bit. Some webbing, yeah. So at this point, they decide, okay, we need to get this thing moving. We need to get this Hogwarts emergency action plan initiated here.
Which I'm guaranteeing they have never actually practiced such a thing before.
They probably should have.
There should be emergency plans in general.
Do you think that's like their version of like an end of the year or beginning of the year? Like the teachers get together during the summer and are like, okay, guys, you got to sit in this meeting. I know it'll never happen, but here's what we do in the case of.
No, I think Hogwarts just needs to get on the level of like we practice fire drills, we practice tornado drills, we practice any kind of drill you can possibly need because it could happen.
Well, I think, okay.
I mean, they should have practiced it after the troll was in the dungeon. Let's be real.
You have to have a dark wizard on the loose drill. It's basically like a lockdown.
Yeah.
You're locking down the school.
If they didn't do it after the troll, then they should have done it after Sirius Black. They should have done it after the Basilisk was running around.
Here's the problem, though. In all of those circumstances that you just brought up, there was one common denominator. Your emergency action plan is named Albus, Percival, Wulfric, Brian, Dumbledore. That's your emergency action plan. That's why they don't have a plan in place.
Yeah.
That's what they've always fallen back on is, well, nothing too bad can really happen because we have the greatest wizard ever as our headmaster. But anyway, I say that in jest because clearly they do have somewhat of a plan, or at least McGonagall does have somewhat of a plan in place.
Well, she's quick on the take. Like, if Harry's saying we need to evacuate, then let's figure this out and let's do it.
Well, she knows that Harry's back. We've just stunned 2 Death Eaters. We can't keep this quiet from Snape for too terribly long.
No.
So the ball is now rolling.
And we know Voldemort is coming. He's on his way.
This can't stop.
Yeah.
So it is what it is at this point. So anyway, she turns toward the door and casts 3 silver cats from her wand, which all go off to inform the other house heads that we need to meet.
Okay, so this triple Patronus thing sent me on a deep dive on Minerva McGonagall for like at least 20 minutes. According to the Wizarding World, she's the only person known to have been witnessed to cast 3 at once. And not only was it 3 at once, but she also did it non-verbally, which is impressive. And Reddit had a lot of thoughts of like, well, why is she able to do that when we haven't seen anyone else, including Dumbledore, do that? And their thinking was that it must be easier to send message Patronus as opposed to defensive ones, since obviously there's no Dementors right here to be having to conjure very happy thoughts against. But then, also interestingly, the fact that she has a cat as a Patronus, obviously because she's got her Animagus form, cats are important to her there, But I didn't know this about McGonagall. They said one of her first acts as an infant witch was to make the family cat do her bidding. So there's quite a lot of connections to kitties in McGonagall's world, and that is why she's one of my favorites.
So does Mrs. Norris go to her for treats? Or, like, how does that work?
They have to be buds. Let's be real. She has to, like, transform into a cat and just be like, I'm going to go hang out with Miss Norris today.
So, if McGonagall's in her cat animagus form, does she just go up to Crookshanks and, like, high paw? Like,
My God, yes, please. Can they just form a cat club? Just, like, walk around Hogwarts with so much sass. I want to see it happen now.
To your point about the 3 Patronus thing, the 3 silver cats erupting from her wand, even though, yes, it is true that this is the only time we are witnessing it actually being casted and performed.
And non-verbally.
That is true. However, with the Order of the Phoenix and how they kind of ran their operations, I'd have to imagine most of them are able to communicate via this form.
Well, yeah.
So
I just don't know if they can do 3 at once.
Well, I'll give you an example. With Kingsley, when he sends the message that the minister has fallen,
Yeah.
not everybody's at that wedding.
No.
He had to send that message to multiple people being like, hey, the minister's down. You need to get out of it.
Yeah, but I think you could argue that he did it to the Weasley house first because he would know Harry's there.
Kingsley could do it. It's Kingsley.
We don't know that.
It's Kingsley. Yeah, I do know that.
We don't know that.
That Lynx is going to multiple
Not
locations.
according to the Wizarding World. I think he sent one first, and then he sent his other separate ones. I think McGonagall right now is showing extra power of sending the 3 because she knows how intense this moment is and how limited time is.
I'm not saying McGonagall's not a super talented witch. I'm just saying the idea that only she is capable of this. I don't know. I think other members of the Order can do it. Well, you know what we're going to do now is we're going to take a break. And then the second half of this episode is going to be crazy. So stick around. We'll be right back.
Before we get to our break sound, I'd like to acknowledge our friend Andy, who helps us produce our intros and our break sounds. If you want to hear more of Andy's work, and like Formula One racing, check out the Outlap F1 podcast. It's your one-stop shop for Formula One news, insights, race previews, and reviews. You can find them wherever you listen to podcasts, and they even have a YouTube page. So check out Andy, Cody, John, James, and Deanna, and join them on the Outlap.
Acura's all-new ADX, a compact SUV that isn't just built for one thing, it's precision-crafted for everything. To escape the grind with available all-wheel drive. To go with your flow with available Google built-in.
Hey Google, turn it up.
Okay, turning up the volume. And crafted to be heard with an available Bang & Olufsen premium sound system. The all-new Acura ADX, crafted to match your energy. Acura, precision-crafted performance.
Take your vibes on go, 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 go.
Google is a trademark of Google LLC.
Dobby has no master. Dobby is a free elf.
All right, so we are back with part 2 of Chapter 30, The Sacking of Severus Snape. We have been Snape-less so far in the beginning to this chapter. However, that might change very shortly. The trio now of Luna, Harry, and McGonagall leaves the Ravenclaw common room, and they're on their way to the Great Hall where the meeting is supposed to take place with the heads of house and all of the students, until they do run into one Severus Snape. Snape was coming to the Ravenclaw common room after Alecto, kind of sent that dark mark message. He was like, I should probably check that out. This is probably something that would concern me. Headmaster, Death Eater, the whole bit.
Voldemort on his way.
Yeah, I should probably be in on this. So, Snape and McGonagall begin to have a tense but relatively calm discussion until this thing goes sideways in a hurry.
Well, the entire time that they're talking to each other, Snape is mostly looking around the air around her, and he's like, I'm very suspicious of you being out late at night because it's not your night to patrol the castle, and it seems like you're where you're not supposed to be. And she's like, oh, well, I forget you Death Eaters have your secret ways of communicating with each other. That's right. And for him to be looking around her, it's obvious that he's looking for Harry. He knows about the invisibility cloak, so he knows. He knows. He's no idiot.
He's not a dumb guy.
No.
So as this conversation gets more and more tense, the tension obviously boils over, and McGonagall strikes first. But Snape is able to produce a shield charm strong enough that it actually knocks her back a little bit.
And the thing that set him off was Snape asking, have you seen Harry Potter tonight?
Yep.
Like, oh, Harry's name's what's going to do it.
As she gets knocked back, McGonagall ends up corralling flames of a nearby torch and brandishes them like a lasso at Snape. Snape then turns those flames into a giant black snake, which McGonagall then turns into smoke, which she reforms into a cloud of daggers that she sends towards Severus. Severus gets a suit of armor to step in front of him and take all of the dagger's damage. Can we just pause right there? That is a flurry of really crazy magic.
I usually read it too quickly to really appreciate what all is happening. Because when it's those big paragraphs of action sequences, I think my eyes just fly through it. So then I don't really break down what is going on. But it's intense.
All of this was nonverbal, by the way.
Yeah.
All of this was them just reacting and fighting in such an advanced way. And I think this is another indication of, you know, I get the knocks on Harry of basically having Expelliarmus be his number one defensive spell. Mm-hmm. And we've seen him use others. We've seen him use Stupefy a bunch and Petrificus Totalis throughout the years and things like that. But these are fully accomplished, very well trained adults, letting their magic shine a bit. This is a whole other level of magic.
They're both looking to kill.
Yeah, they're both not holding any punches back. Also, with how quick Snape was able to produce that shield charm, obviously they both encountered each other, wands ready.
Well, I think he also used a little bit of Legitimon's while looking at her.
Possibly.
Because it said he was like looking all around her, and then he finally made eye contact with her when he was like, have you seen Harry Potter tonight? I think that was the moment where it was like, oh yeah, I almost see what she's going to do before she does it.
I think he's also looking around the air around her, not only to look for Harry, but he's also expecting a spell to come out of nowhere.
Possibly.
So, I mean, he is like pretty twitchy in a good way with this shield charm. He's expecting spells to come fast and furious from maybe multiple angles. So, I mean, he is prepared for a duel. But the three silver cats seem to have found their targets. Flitwick, Sprout, and eventually Slughorn join the fray. Flitwick comes in hot. Flitwick says, "You'll do no more murder at Hogwarts," and suddenly brings to life the armor that was shielding Snape from the daggers, and the armor attempts to restrain Snape. Snape then sends it flying towards his attackers, and then ultimately, Snape ends up retreating, breaking through a window in a nearby room, and flies across the grounds as a large, giant, bat-like figure.
Well, it said like he jumped, and Harry's like, "Wait, he's dead?" And they're like, "No. He learned a new trick from Voldemort. He can fly. He can fly."
All while McGonagall shouts, "Coward!"
Yeah.
into the night sky.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's quite the little mini scene of Severus Snape versus Minerva McGonagall.
Which, this is the sacking of Severus Snape.
This would be the sacking.
This is his resignation letter.
What a spoilery chapter title. Unbelievable. Yeah, but
it's basically like Hogwarts has fired him.
It would be interesting. I would love to see that battle be extended. I get that, they view him as a coward for running there. But if you're faced with McGonagall and Flitwick, just those two, forget that Slughorn and Sprout are also present, and I'm very sure very accomplished witch and wizard. But just Flitwick and McGonagall is probably enough to be like, I'm probably not winning this. I need to peace out,
Well, they have other things to focus on instead of pursuing him, because this is when Harry sees Voldemort has reached the lake, and he's like, we have to hurry up.
Yes. McGonagall rallies the heads of house. She tells them that Voldy is indeed coming to Hogwarts. They need to barricade the school. Flitwick does acknowledge, like, hey, you're aware that we can't keep him out forever, right? Which, again, just take that statement. You just had Flitwick and McGonagall beat down Snape. Or at least beat him back enough to where he had to retreat. And Flitwick like, even our combined power, I don't know that we're holding back Voldy for very long. Sprout, however, chips in with, we might not be able to keep him out forever, but we'll hold him up as long as we possibly can. And after she says that, her and McGonagall share a grim look of understanding. So, what does a protection look like? So they want to establish a basic protection first, so they can then gather students together. Most of them will evacuate and get away from this battle scene. And then McGonagall does say those of age who want to stay and fight can. That should be their choice, which I think is an interesting statement.
Well, they'd want to defend their school.
Sprout immediately sets off to gather the Hufflepuffs, and as she's setting off, she's heard muttering Tentaculas, Devil's Snare, Snargaluff pods. Yeah, I'd like to see the Death Eaters deal with those. And let me just tell you, as a person who's played Hogwarts Legacy, the venomous Tentaculas do deal quite a bit of damage.
Don't you, throw them or something in the game?
You throw, a pot out there, and it, spurts from the pot and starts, shooting venomous, darts or whatever at the opponent. But, yeah, I always actually tend to forget about it as an option, but they are quite useful if you want to utilize those. But that's what she's going off to do. Flitwick says, yeah, you know what? I'm good here. And the Snape-shaped hole that is now in the window, he just sticks his wand out of it and starts muttering super complex spells and incantations. One of which we actually know is Protego Horribilis.
Which Wizarding World basically said that it's a extreme version of a shield charm. It's a protective spell, which they mostly theorize was used to keep out dark creatures. So, the Dementors can't cross that shield, that border. Any other dark creature would also struggle with crossing it.
Interesting. Okay. Harry, tentative to disrupt the concentration of one Flitwick, but does end up asking him about the diadem. Hey, do you know anything about Ravenclaw's diadem? With Flitwick, obviously unaware of what the purpose of the question is, kind of shakes it off with I appreciate the...
Now's not the time, sir.
Yeah, I appreciate the interest in wisdom, but I don't think a diadem's really going to help you here. And Harry presses him again, and Flitwick says, no one has seen the diadem in living memory. Harry is deflated by that news. Slughorn goes up to McGonagall and is like, hey, are we sure this is the right course of action? Voldy is sure to get in here. And when he does, there's gonna be problems. There's gonna be retribution here. Vengeance. And McGonagall turns to Slughorn and says that he is free to evacuate with his students if he wishes. She does warn him, however, if there's any attempt to sabotage the resistance, or if he or any of his students take up arms against them, we duel to kill.
As you said, the time has come for Slytherin House to decide upon its loyalties. Which did make me wonder, do you think Slytherin would be more Team Voldy or Team Hogwarts?
I think Salazar Slytherin in this case would probably lean towards Voldy.
Interesting.
I think
the exact opposite.
I think he would lean towards Voldy. I think he would maybe try to persuade Voldy in another course of action. I think it's pretty clear Salazar Slytherin and Tom Riddle have the same viewpoint on the magical world. Mm-hmm. Wizards are better. The purer the blood, the better. And muggles can kick rocks. So I think they would align there. So I think Salazar Slytherin would fully support Voldy's movement as a whole. The assault on the castle, yeah, he might take umbrage with that, being like, hey, this is a place that I built. I have heritage here. I have, like, stakes in this game.
I have a secret chamber here.
I have a secret chamber with, my pet, which is now not so anymore. But, yeah, he would probably have issues with the assault on the castle that he helped build.
See, I think he would be more Team Hogwarts because, yes, he did build the place, and yes, there is a secret chamber and all that fun stuff. I would think that if he originally wanted to create a place of education, and that was the goal of the four founders, to see a lunatic come in and destroy the place and try to destroy essentially education and that right for anybody, even if he does want to be more selective with who goes into his house, I still feel like it'd be like, we gotta protect the school. That's my legacy. That's my life's purpose.
It is his legacy, which I think would be his sticking point. Mm-hmm. That would be the point I think he'd have more of an issue with than the educator part. Only because he left. When he didn't get his way, he resigned. So, and he himself might not have been strong enough to force the other three founders to his point of view. But if Voldy's on the doorstep of being able to force Hogwarts to do what they want, maybe.
See, this is why we need a Founders series.
I mean, I would love a Founders series. We're probably not going to get one anytime soon.
No.
But I find it interesting in this conversation here. McGonagall openly says we duel to kill. Mm-hmm. Which I think you see a little bit in that her versus Snape mini fight. That's advanced magic, and those have real consequences. One of those daggers, one of those many daggers that she sent towards Snape, I mean, those are kill shots. Mm-hmm. So the we duel to kill, and I think Slughorn gets taken aback by this, by like, Minerva, we're colleagues here. Like, I have no issues with you.
Yeah, but she is also like, look, he's on his way. If any of your house tried to fight us, be on Team Voldemort, then like, you can't. It's us in Hogwarts or evil, good or evil. Choose your side.
We've obviously gotten to that moment, but it's one of those ultimatums that really shock you into this is happening. Mm-hmm. This is now real. Mm-hmm. So
it's happening now.
And it's happening now.
Yeah.
So. At this point in time, Slughorn does go down to the dungeons and gathers the Slytherins. And we get an appearance of a character that we actually talked about on a recent episode. We get one Argus Filch. Students out of bed! Students in the corridors! They're supposed to be, you idiot.
Yep. Is
the response from McGonagall. And McGonagall says, Filch, since you're here, do me a favor. Go fetch Peeves.
I love him being like, what, get Peeves? He's like, yes, haven't you been complaining about him for a quarter of a century? Just go get Peeves. Peeves, the poltergeist. Peeves, get him. I love Peeves. I did a little bit of a deeper dive on Peeves because the idea of a poltergeist has always confused me a bit because I've always just kind of thought of them as ghosts, I guess, but I know they're not the same. So according to the Wizarding World, Peeves is a being that has existed the entirety of Hogwarts' history, because Peeves is basically a manifestation of the chaos that you get, especially around lots of children. And since he has never been born, he cannot die. So that's the big difference between poltergeists and ghosts, where ghosts, obviously, you had to have a life in order to have it be taken away from you and have your existence be that shadowy thing. But as a poltergeist, if you were never born, you can't die. So as long as that chaos is everywhere, you can contribute to it. And it said that Peeves is a particularly active poltergeist, as we have seen. They said most poltergeists in like muggle houses or wizarding houses tends to be invisible and small. It's just like a little bit of chaos. But Peeves obviously has a whole physical form to him, and interestingly enough, they said how magic can work on him, as we've seen with like Lupin. So it's like the rules don't fully apply. They even said that there's questions about Peeves and his ability to conjure up food, which would be in violation of that Gamp's law that Hermione loves so much. Which I'm not sure if that's entirely the case, or if he just is always has like a roll in his pocket that he can whip at a kid or whatever. But yeah, that just the fact that he is always a part of Hogwarts' history, and every headmaster and every caretaker is like, ugh, this guy. They've tried to expel him repeatedly, and it just does not seem to work, because this is where he belongs. It's his home.
Given all of that, and given that the rules that we've seen with ghosts and stuff like that don't particularly apply to him, I'm still worried for Peeves' safety during the Carrows reign. I feel like the Carrows would find interesting ways to deal with Peeves, unless Peeves figured that out.
I want him to sneak up on them and be like, got your conch!
I think Peeves would find ways to assert himself at Hogwarts during the Carrows' reign. Don't get me wrong. I think he's still very active, but I think he would also be wise enough to know that he should avoid the Carrows, because they will not hesitate to do a little bit more than shooting gum or whatever Lupin did back in the day. I wonder what the most they could do to him is. Like, immobilize him? Silence him? I don't know.
I don't know either.
I'm sure they would love to find out, though. But anyway, speaking of spells, we are about to talk about my favorite spell in all of Harry Potter. I think it's the most epic, the most cool spell that we have. You ready for it? Pier Totem Locomotor. What does Pier Totem Locomotor do? McGonagall is the one who uses it, and all of the statues and suits of armor around the entirety of Hogwarts jump from their plinths or wherever they happen to be mounted. McGonagall states, Hogwarts is threatened. Man the boundaries. Protect us. Do your duty to your school. And they all start running, yelling, wailing, clanking, waving around whatever weapons they might or may not be having. By the way, there's all kinds of different forms of statues and suits of armor. There's some
sizes too.
And sizes. So there's some animals included in this and some other things. I think, in Hogwarts Legacy, we see like troll armor. So armor that's big enough to actually fit a troll, or I think there's even maybe giant, if I'm not mistaken. But there's a lot of cool armor and statues that you can mobilize for the defense of Hogwarts. That is awesome. This, in the application of the books, and this in the application of the movies, I loved this spell.
So
I love
is this why
spell.
you reread it all the time? Or
No.
Different moment.
Different moment. I love this spell, and it's my favorite one in the entire series, but it's a great moment. It's a great quote from McGonagall, though. Hogwarts is threatened. Man the boundaries. Protect us. Do your duty to your school. So this must be a spell that, like, her and Albus always had in their back pocket. Like, hey, if something really crazy happens,
This is part of the plan.
this is in the Hogwarts emergency action plan of, like, this is what we can do. It's crazy. Absolutely crazy. Harry and Luna end up running back to the room of requirement, and when they get there, this room is packed. It is loaded. Elizabeth, this is part of this chapter that I just reread constantly because I personally love it.
Do you think the room had to expand to make room
Yes,
for everybody?
of course. Of course it did. So, the room is packed. It is full of new arrivals. We have Kingsley, Lupin. Makes sense, right? Kingsley and Lupin, that tracks. Mm-hmm. Oliver Wood, Katie Bell, Angelina Johnson, Alicia Spinett, all Quidditch team members that came back. Did anybody on their bingo card, when you were reading this the first time, have Oliver Wood showing up?
I was very happy he came back.
I bet you were. I was stunned. I see Oliver Wood, and I'm like, oh, that's so cool, Oliver Wood. Oh, we got an Oliver Wood mention.
They're not the only ones.
They're not the only ones. We get Bill, Fleur, Arthur, and Molly all come back. And when Harry arrives, obviously all of the attention in the room turns to him. Lupin's like, what's going on? What's happening? Why are we here? Why have we been called here? And Harry says, bluntly, we're fighting. We're here to fight. This is happening. And at that point, most of the people in the room rush past him and go to the Great Hall, where he said everybody is meeting.
After a massive cheer. They're
cheer.
very excited about getting to fight.
Mrs. Weasley, however, has prohibited Ginny from attending, saying she needs to go home. You're underage.
Well, it's interesting, like, this whole conversation after everyone runs out, everyone left is Ginny, Molly and Arthur, the twins, Fleur, Bill, and Lupin. And yeah, everyone is really focused on Ginny. And I think, like, Molly is berating Fred and George for calling Ginny, and they're like, oh, yeah, maybe we shouldn't have done it. And she's like, I'm sorry, I'm part of this family. I have, like, skin in the game. I want to know, I want to help, I want to fight. And it's just, like, every single person being like, no, Ginny, you're underage. You have to stay. And it takes her finally seeing Harry shake his head at her for her to be like, okay, fine.
So what she doesn't want is to have to go back home and have to sit in the burrow while literally the world is falling apart, and then just have to be told after the fact, we won or we lost.
Right.
Are we good? Are we all still here? Like, that would be absolute torture to sit there without knowing. She does turn to go out of the tunnel entrance, go back to the Hog's Head. However, someone stumbles through, entering the room of requirement. Percy arrives.
And he's like, am I too late? Has things started? Oh, it's my entire family. For the most part. Right here.
Family, extended family, it's all the same. Fleur breaks this awkward Weasley family tension.
Oh, because it's awkward silence for, like, way too long. It's really uncomfortable.
She asks about Lupin's child, Teddy. And Lupin says, Teddy's doing well. Tonks is watching him at home. You want to see a picture? Here's a picture.
He has turquoise hair.
Yeah.
I approve so much.
So, as this tension lingers and Lupin becomes more and more awkward, Percy breaks the silence with, I was a fool. And then he continues on a couple of phrases, and he was about to add another one on, and he says, and then Fred says, you're a ministry-loving, family-disowning, power-hungry moron.
He's like, yes, I was. I'm like, all right, well, you know what? Fine. That's an apology. I'll take you back.
Fred holds out his hand with Percy's admission to being an idiot.
Yep.
And Molly immediately bursts into tears, pushes Fred aside, and pulls Percy into a big hug, to which, looking past his mother, looks to Arthur and says, I'm sorry, Dad.
And Arthur is holding back tears. This is a very emotional moment.
Yeah, obviously this really broke a family for a long period of time.
Yeah.
And Percy goes on to say, like, look, I've been trying to leave the ministry I've been trying to find an out for a little while now. It's really hard. Like, they're cracking down.
I mean, he
super
said,
hard.
like, any reason to imprison someone, they're going for it. So for him to try to sneak out and go to blood traders, #1 most wanted adults,
He said
other than Harry.
He found a way to sneak a message to Aberforth.
Yeah.
Which is interesting that he would know how to, like, Aberforth is the guy I need to send a message to.
I don't know.
But
maybe he went to the Burrow and saw that they were all at Hogwarts, like, with the clock.
Percy said he reached out to Aberforth.
Yeah, so maybe he
So
reached
he
out to
knew-
Aberforth being like, I know they're at Hogwarts. How do I get in? Maybe.
I don't know how Percy determined or figured out that Aberforth is the contact guy. I don't know. It was just interesting. But anyway. In the moment of the reconciliation of the family, Ginny's like, I'm just going to sneak out to the Great Hall.
No one's going to notice.
But they're like, hey, why don't you just stay in the room of requirement? You're here. You'll know if anything happens. But stay here where you're safe. Ginny's okay with it as Arthur gives her a firm gaze. Mm-hmm. So Harry notices after this reconciliation that, hey, wait a second. You know who's not here? Ron and Hermione. Where are they at?
I've only been with them for months, and now we finally get to Hogwarts, and it's like, where'd they go?
To be fair, there's a lot going on. And there's a lot of people, because even on the way to the room of requirement, he had to, like, shove his way past all of the students heading to the Great Hall.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's a lot of people that he's had to fight through and address. And, yeah, he's just now realizing, hey, wait, my two best friends. I don't know where they're at. I think it's Ginny that says, oh, yeah, they just went to the bathroom. Or they went to a bathroom?
They said something about a bathroom.
Something about a bathroom. Harry pulls out the Marauders map and looks at the nearest bathroom, which is empty. And as that happens, he gets a sharp, sudden pain in his head, and he sees Voldy, who is now standing at the gates of Hogwarts with Nagini draped around his shoulders.
With a mood for murder. And that's where it ends.
That's where the chapter ends. Yet another cliffhanger. But yeah, so the thing that I love about that Room of Requirement scene is it's the same thing I liked in the chapter where Harry returns to Hogwarts and enters that Room of Requirement, and he just gets all of these cheers as he's welcomed back, when we just spent all of Book 4 and all of Book 5 with Harry just being this complete pariah. And now he's welcomed back to cheers. And this is another one of those things where we're getting the band back together in a way. We're bringing back old characters to help Harry in this fight. And it's great to see the names, and it's great to see what this means.
This is the same feeling you get if you're a Marvel fan and you're watching Endgame and it's the Avengers assemble and they're all coming out of the magic circles. You're just like, there's this person and this person and this person, and oh my gosh, they're all here. They're all gonna fight, and it's all gonna be great, and it's gonna be really hard, but they're gonna do it. And just like,
the problem is,
it's so uplifting.
These are more and more characters that are now coming,
Yeah.
and this is gonna be intense.
Yeah.
So, and Voldy, like you said, he's here for one thing and one thing only. He's here to kill. And as we've heard from McGonagall, of all people, they're here to put some people down. They're not here to take prisoners. They're here to kill. Mm-hmm. So this serious business. And just to like recap this chapter really quick, you had Snape versus McGonagall fight. You had a reunion of Quidditch members and Order of the Phoenix members and
The
DA
Weasley
members.
family.
You had a reunion of the Weasley family with Percy coming back. Like, there's a lot.
I am glad that happened, at least. Like,
There's a lot here in this chapter.
Like, if Percy had just been never mentioned again, that would have been very unsatisfying. I'm not necessarily the biggest fan of Percy. Like, he's just whatever. I'm indifferent. But if he never came back around, I would hate it. I like showing the redemption of being like, it's okay to apologize when you realize that you're wrong.
Well, as far as the parents go, I think that's all Molly and Arthur were looking for, is just a genuine, heartfelt apology.
Yeah.
They didn't need all
Sometimes
the other
that's
stuff.
all you really need.
They didn't need the other stuff.
Yeah.
Like Fred and George, and I'm sure Ron eventually would. Ginny holds grudges, but the boys on the boys' side, they just want to hear Percy admit that he was wrong and that he screwed up in a major way. Especially with how Percy has been with this whole air of I'm better than. Mm-hmm. I'm better than you, Fred. I'm better than you, George. I'm better than you, Ron. I'm trying to get to where Bill's at. To hear him knock himself down a peg is what they wanted. That's what they wanted to hear him say.
Right.
So when he's able to humble himself, that's when Fred's like, you know what? Okay. As long as you're willing to admit that, we're good. We're all good. So, no, there's a lot in this chapter that's top-notch. So I really do love this chapter. Also, my favorite spell is in this chapter, which is great. It's just awesome.
Again, I don't know what my favorite spell is. I have my favorite magical item. I have my favorite magical creatures, but I don't know if I have a favorite spell.
This spell is epic. That's all I gotta say. Let us know what your favorite spell is. Let us know what your favorite part of this loaded chapter was. Whether it was the McGonagall Snape fight, or the Percy reunion, or all of the old names coming back. If you're a big Oliver Wood person, let us know. I also had the regrets of this would have been a great moment if he had survived for Cedric Diggory to come back and play an important role. Obviously, if you've stuck with us through the podcast, you know my thoughts on Cedric Diggory and what could have been for him. But let us know what characters you want to see come back. If you got your pick of which character you kind of wanted to see pop in this room of requirement, let us know.
Are you hoping for Mandy Brocklehurst?
You know what? Mandy Brocklehurst, she is either still here at Hogwarts as a Ravenclaw, or maybe she does come back and fight. That would be super, super cool if we get a Mandy Brocklehurst big moment in the next chapter. The next chapter is a big one. So we'll have something special planned for that. Mm-hmm. We might have multiple people on. So that'll be exciting to get a bunch of different views and opinions on this big chapter coming up. But we want to know your thoughts. So give us a comment on Spotify if you are following us on Blue Sky or on Instagram, or if you're listening to us on YouTube. You can find most of our socials at Hogwarts a Pod. Please also participate in the poll that's up on Spotify. We love seeing those results as well. So thank you all for listening, and we'll be back next week with Chapter 31, The Battle of Hogwarts. Thanks for listening. Thank you for listening to Hogwarts, a podcast. If you like what you've heard, please click the subscribe button on your preferred podcasting app and follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Hogwarts a Pod.